one online? Okay, so we'll go ahead and proceed with the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was December 14th. So I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second from Gene. Well, since you two are the only voting members currently on, I suppose that would mean that the motion carries. So we'll go ahead and consider that or those minutes approved. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Doug Pode for the main part of tonight's meeting, which is the public hearing for the Transportation Improvement Program. So Doug, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you.
Looks
Tim.
like you have Drew joined as well, by the way.
Yep.
Smith.
Oh, yes, I see that. Thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank everybody for listening in this evening and appreciate taking the time to listen about and hear where your gas tax dollars are going for the next 5 years. To begin with, I have a trivia question. If you haven't looked at the document, if you have, you've already know the answer, but if you haven't, can you guesstimate how many dollars in federal gas tax money do we receive annually? Any takers on that? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and the answer is for federal fiscal year 2024, NDOT has told us that we will receive approximately $6.26 million to spend on improvements. Now, I would like to tell everyone that this amount has increased by $1.25 million. It was under $5 million under the previous Transportation Act. So you can thank all of your congressional legislatures who voted in favor of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed not too long ago. That act actually gave us additional federal funds to use for various improvements throughout the community. First off, I'd like to kind of step back and go into what I call a brief intro of what the TIP is. First off, for those of you who do not know, the TIP or Transportation Improvement Program is a federal required document, and it is required in the new transportation legislation, and it has been in pretty much all of the previous ones. It is one of the two main documents that metropolitan planning organizations or um, or places a bit, no, I shouldn't say business, but entities such as the Area Plan Commission have to do in order to use federal gas tax funds. The other document that is required is our long range transportation plan, or what we call our metropolitan transportation plan. And that plan is a long range 20+ year plan. The TIP is a short range plan and only covers 5 years. In addition, it needs to be updated regularly. We do have the option to update it only every 4 years, but for many years we did actually annually look at this report and document and update it. But now we do it every other year, and basically we're following the same timeline as the Indiana Department of Transportation and their development of their TIP, what they call the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program. They are also working on one and will be rolling out information about their document here fairly soon. We're just a pinch ahead of them. And this is this document in itself is where we allocate our gas tax funds for the next 5 years. And then also, it makes sure that our gas tax funds are spent wisely. There's an extensive amount of information in the document telling you what we look at, how we go through the process of allocating our funds. And it is fairly extensive, and there are a lot of reviews that go on. And then also, another critical piece for in the tonight as part of that is that it's very heavy intensive of involving the public. Years ago, basically all we did was just put notices in the newspaper, but those times have long passed. We not only still do that, but then we also send invitation letters out to well over 90 different individuals and organizations. We post notices throughout the county, and we also do that not only in English but also in Spanish. And then we also post information on social media, especially Facebook and Nextdoor. So, basically what we're going through right now is looking at our federal gas tax and how we allocate those funds. Back in December, we introduced to you the proposed projects that we will be looking at. And since then, we did go through the process and allocate our federal gas tax funds. And then we also developed the draft document, and that was also posted on our um, website, and then it was released through various parts or through various means of information and media. And we are going to go through that document this evening to present to you what will be happening in the next 5 years and where our federal funds are allocated. So I'm going to actually then now jump into the document itself. And then, Tim, if you could bring the document up and then actually go to table 4. Table 4 is the table which we show all of the local projects that will be receiving our federal gas tax funds. I believe it's on page 17. And not only does it show those projects, there we go, start with that page. Thank you, Tim. It not only does it show those projects, but it also shows the larger projects that the cities, county, and NDOT will be doing just strictly with local funds. So it gives you a big picture look of what's going on. It does not include basically your resurfacing projects that the cities and county do every year, or the sidewalk ramp replacement projects. These are looking at the big picture, big projects. And what we have in front of you today, right now, in the table 4, are the projects from the city of Lafayette. 3rd and 4th Street, converting those from a one-way pair to a two-way street system. We also have the first project that we're going to talk about using our federal gas tax funds is actually constructing the first part of the Big Four Trail in Tippecanoe County. And that will be constructed along 9th Street and Cassu Street. And right now we're targeting fiscal year 2027. And when I talk about fiscal year, I mean the state fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. So state fiscal year 2024 starts on July 1st of 2023. Going to project 3, the next one below that, we are going to use our safety funds for an exciting project that we've never done here, in that the city, both Lafayette and West Lafayette, will use our safety funds to install emergency vehicle preemption so that emergency vehicles can get to the location where they need to quicker. But yet, in addition to that, if they need to transport a person to a hospital, they could actually trigger the signal system and give the emergency vehicle preemption. So it's an exciting project. We've never had one of this size before in our community. So we think that's a good use of our safety funds. And as you can see here, the cost of construction in 2 years for almost, basically $2 million. Going on, looking at the next projects, Project 4, the city will be doing this project with just local funds, and that is doing an intersection improvement at McCarty Lane and Creasy Lane. At this point, it's too early to tell exactly what will happen at that intersection, so I cannot give you a sneak peek and tell you that yes or no, a roundabout will be constructed, but at this point, I can tell you that they are looking at doing something with that, and that will be occurring in 2028. I should like to also point out a few things about this table is that as you see the project and see the location and what type of improvement it is on the left, we also have the information on the right, which you see PE, RW, and CN. Those are basically the three major phases of a project. PE, preliminary engineering, RW is right of way, and then CN, construction. And then just to the right of that, that is an indication of types of funds will be used. We, in this column, show the federal funds, like the previous project, HSIP. Those are safety funds. And then for this project, like some of the other ones, it gives the code here, and then you can look back in the funding summary earlier than this and figure out exactly what three funding sources the city will use. And then it gives you in the first column the federal funds that will be used, the local funds, and then the total cost. And then finally to the right, the year anticipated. PM is performance measure. That is now a requirement that we have to put in, is that we need to make sure that these projects address one of the 6 performance measures. And then also to kind of give a summary about the project, total cost. So right now, this project, when all said and done, will just be under $4 million. So that includes the preliminary engineering, right-of-way, and construction. It includes what has been already spent and what we estimate to spend in the future. The next project coming up here, Park East Boulevard, is constructing that last link between McCarty Lane and Haggerty Lane. Right now, right-of-way is anticipated in 2024. The city is actually doing the engineering of that. And when construction will occur, at this point, we don't know. That is shown actually in a table after this, that it will occur, but at this time, we don't know. Whether it be, 25, 26, 27, 28, or later, we just don't know. So that's why it's in another table, and that's just for information only. But as you can see, the total cost is over $23 million for just the construction of this. One project, the next one, 6 South 9th Street. This is the reconstruction of the road from Brick and Wood to Veterans Memorial. And it's a widening, basically going to 2-lane to 3-lane, and reconstruction to an urban cross section with a trail. Federal funds will be used with this project, and as you can see, right-of-way will actually occur this up-and-coming fiscal year, and then following that, construction is targeted in fiscal year 2026, which is at the very end of calendar year 2025 or at the beginning of 2026. Last project for the city of Lafayette is Veterans Memorial, starting to, actually I see a typo there, so I'm glad you have this up. So I need to fix that. This is a road widening project. It added travel lane in each direction. And this basically is from US 52 to the railroad overpass. So when Veterans Memorial, the entire segment from east and west to south was designed, it was designed that sometime in the future, the whole entire ring road would be 4 travel lanes. That's why in some locations you see businesses set back fairly far, as that in the future we knew when this was being developed, it would be 4 travel lanes. So that's why it kind of looks really odd in some locations. Going to the next page, this is West Lafayette projects. Here we show Cherry Lane Extension, Phase 2. The next improvement of that happening, or at least beginning of that, the engineering in 2026. Also improving one section of Cumberland Avenue, what they call Phase 4, and you can see that location and what is being proposed. But the big project that you'll be using federal funds is Project 10, Soldiers Home Road. And in essence, this is from Sagamore Parkway to Calbear Road. As you can see in looking at this, we had to break the project up into 3. Basically, it shows 2 phases here, but it's 3 phases. And the reason why is simply construction cost. Looking at just the construction of basically from Sagamore Parkway to Hamilton Street, you're looking at $10 million. And that also includes, point out, and this is probably the first time you'll hear about this, is that the ramps that connect to Soldiers Home Road, they're looking at converting not only that one, but then the one on the other side of Sagamore Parkway from the typical intersection it is to roundabout. So a big project, very expensive, so it is broken up into individual phases. Going on, now Tippecanoe County has a lot of projects going on, and a lot of those are actually bridge projects. First one, county bridge inspection. This is a project where they actually inspect, or at least hire a firm to go through and inspect various bridges throughout the year. It's a federal requirement, and fortunately we get federal funds. And in essence, what it does is to look at bridges to make sure they're in good repair, and then if there are any needs or if they see anything, then the county can then take steps to actually address those issues. Project 12 and then the companion project on the next page are both on Lilly Road. Bridge replacements. These are actually 2 really narrow bridges that have been in the works for quite some time. So we actually are now looking at the construction phase. So those projects are moving along. And then going on, we see some more projects, 80 and 83. Both of these are over Flint Creek on the western side of the county, both bridge replacements again. Bridge 527, this is basically on old US 231 over the Wea Creek. This is a bridge replacement project. North 9th Street Road Bridge, this is basically replacing the deck. This is the bridge over the Wabash River. And not only are they going to replace it so we have 2 travel lanes, but they're also going to widen it so a trail can be there on the west side. So part of our long-range plan of establishing and putting a trail to the state park into Battleground. One big project that has been in the works for a while is Morehouse Road, reconstructing and widening it from basically Sagamore Parkway to just north of the Mason-Dixon Road. Again, it's a fairly expensive project. The first phase construction is targeted for 2024 with the following phase 2 in 2025. As you can see, the construction of both of those going to be over $10 million. Going on to the next page. Of course, there are other bridges which the county is going to address with local funds, and those are the top priority bridges. And then, not to leave City Bus out, but we also have some projects for them. Of course, they are applying and will be using their federal funds for both operating assistance and capital projects. And then there are other funds that can be used. Right now, they don't have any proposed or new projects been guaranteed additional funds for capital and operating, except we are now showing the bus stop project, which is improving 6 projects. That's on the next page, I believe. Thank you. Right there, project 25. And we also do show, of course, the one there, 23, is replacing fixed route buses. Some exciting news regarding if you are looking or thinking about, basically watching our carbon footprint. City Bus is actually seriously thinking about moving towards running buses with hydrogen. Right now, their compressed natural gas, CNG, and pretty much a very large majority of the fleet is CNG, but they are looking at the next step and converting the buses to hydrogen. So that hold on to your chairs. That will be coming up later on, not today, but in the next 5 to 10 years. Going on, we have no projects for Battleground, Clarks Hill, or Dayton. And of course, we do have projects that are coming up for the Purdue University Airport. And they are looking at their taxiways and then also some snow removal equipment. So, all said and done, if you see the grand total there at the bottom, when we look at the total amount, over $200 million over the next 5 years, a substantial amount going to our transportation projects. The next table, which we have, which I'll just briefly touch on, is Table 5, and this is just for information only. This information contains projects that they would like to do. For example, South Street from Sagamore Parkway to 65. They want to pedestrianize it, make it safe, or put more safety aspects in it, complete streets. Right now, it's just an idea. There's no money in it, but they do have an estimate. And then again, here's Park East Boulevard. You can see that, as we discussed earlier in Table 4, they know they want to do it. They are planning on doing it, but they just don't know when. Going on to City of Lafayette, here are the next two phases, or Phase 2 and 3 of City of West Lafayette. Since it's such a large project, construction for the Phase 2 is targeted in 2029, and then the other roundabout conversion, actually they're looking at using just local funds for 2030. And then, of course, another project that they would like to use federal funds for, Yeager Road. This did not receive any of our federal funds, but yet they requested them. And this is a road and intersection reconstruction from Cumberland Avenue to Calvert Road. You can see the costs, but yet this project, we simply didn't have enough funds. So to show the public like you that the city would like to do this, it's included in this table. Another project similar to that are from the county, Harrison Trail, which is constructing trails and safety improvements near Harrison High School along 600 North and 50 West, and improving a portion of 150 West. So those are basically projects that that we would like to do. We don't have enough funding for them, so that if for some reason we do get federal funding, we can actually start these projects. So, okay, now we took a look at what's happening on the local side. So now I'm going to jump over to the NDOT project side, and if we can go to the to Table 6. The NDOT project. This is the table where NDOT says, okay, we have these funds, federal funds, state funds. This is what we're going to spend our money on in Tippecanoe County. And when you get a chance after the meeting to look through this entire list, you'll know pretty much all of them are basically maintenance projects. We don't have any really new like road widenings, more interstate widening projects. But when you get down to the bottom line and see how much they're spending, it's like, wow, they're really doing a lot of maintenance. So the two big projects that I really want to pick out, first one on State Road 26, if you go back a little bit, this is over at Goose Creek. The Project 3, thank you, Tim. You can see this is a new bridge construction. They're replacing the bridge, over $5 million. This bridge actually was constructed, if I remember correctly, 30, 40 years ago. So it's a fairly new bridge if you think about it, but it needs to be reconstructed. So that's the biggest project in this list. And then the next project, which is nearly at $5 million, is on State Road 225. So if you kind of scroll down a little bit, keep going. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Project 15. That bridge has issues. Specifically, the trusses, the structure itself, and this project will bring the bridge back up to where it should be. It was damaged, as you well know, recently, and the State Road 225 is closed. And unfortunately, when that happened, the target year was 2024. The bad news is it's has slipped a year, and now they're looking at 2025. So apologies for that disappointing information, but it is still moving forward. So in essence, if you look at it, the NDOT project table, you will see a lot of information of what they're wanting to do. You know, a lot of, putting overlays, a lot of bridge overlays, which is basically a thin layer of protective coating to basically, actually it works. It extends the life of the bridge many, many years. Wish they would have done that for a long time, or a long time ago, but they do spend a lot of money on that. And then you see projects here on this page and in the previous one, projects that, don't have a specific location, but are throughout. They may involve something here in Tippecanoe County, but we're required to include those. So that's why we have these projects at, say, various state locations. Like here, ITS, there's a lot of those. And then here's contract for NEPA support. So they hire a consulting firm so they can use that firm wherever throughout the state. So we have to include that information. So basically, that is where our federal, local, and state funding is going to. So the tip also includes a lot of other information as well. And, I'm going to go through some things, well, we could. So if you could kind of scroll back to the public and participation process. We have a lot of information here on how we develop the tip. The first thing that we felt is very, very important is that we actually spell out. I think you went back a pinch too far. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. This section right here, if you read through this spells out exactly the methodology we use to get the information out. And not only to get the information out, but in addition, take the information that we receive, record it, and then use that information to make our decision. So it's a fairly extensive process. Again, explains all of our notification process, posting of notices throughout the community, reaching out on social media. So if you'd like to know that process, this is the section that we explain all of that. The next section, if you could go to number 2 quickly, Tim. Thank you. Environmental justice. This is another important aspect of what the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration wants us to look at. And we have to take this into account when we are allocating our federal gas tax funds. So this process actually discusses that. We look at the proposed projects and look to see if they will impact minority and low-income populations. We have a 2-tier assessment process. First off, we go through a really high level, look at census data to see if the projects are either close to, touching, or within areas that have a higher concentration of minority and low-income populations. If they do, then we identify it here, and then in addition to that, we do a more detailed, in-depth analysis. And then we also explain the process and how we get the information out to these individual groups and persons. Going on to the next one, 3. This is where we talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. So we have information about that because yes, ADA and improvements must have them. So we do take that serious. And this chapter or this part discusses that. Going on to the next one, please. This is what we call red flag investigations. This is actually a first cut environmental review. All projects that require or will be using federal funds, I should say, must have a environmental review, or what we call a NEPA. As you can see, the National Environmental Policy Act review. And we look at various aspects of the project and see if it will affect. There's basically, I think, what, 5 different things, or 5 or 6. And we actually have a table in here. If you go down a pinch, here's where we did the red flag investigations. These are the projects and the locations. And then basically in staff, we do that analysis. And then the summary is right here that the Big 4 Trail, the Jaeger Road, there are some environmental issues that when they do go into the engineering phase, the consultant and the jurisdiction will need to look at these. So we can give an idea of, will they need to spend more money on the NEPA process? And this is part of that. So as you can see, we look at infrastructure, water resources, mining, mineral exploitation, hazmat's concern. And it looks like I got a typo there. So there's another typo we found out. So I'm glad we're looking at this specifically. Okay, going on, the next section is actually going into the project selection process. And this is basically a short summary of the whole entire process beginning in October. And if you think about it, this document, we started doing this in October, early October. And here it is now in early March, and we're discussing the document. We actually finished the draft in early February. So a very short timeline to get all of this done. So it's exciting that we managed to do this. So anyway, this is a one-page summary of the process and the steps that it goes through. The next section is just what I covered in more detail previously, the 5-year program of projects, and we've already went over those. It lists all of the individual projects. So we're going to just skip over that for now, since we covered that. So yeah, Tim can scroll down at hyper speed, which it looks like he's getting done. The next section is section 7. And that page, I believe, is on 35. So there we go. So if you want to know specifically about the individual federal funds, and we have a section for each one, and where those funds are going to, and what those funds are actually for, this is the chapter. We have individual sections. If you scroll down just a pinch, the biggest funding pot we receive federal funds for is what we call STBG funds. As you can see, it stands for Surface Transportation Block Group Funds. And as you can see in that second paragraph there, the amount we receive for the next 3 fiscal years, then of course 27 and 28 are basically the same as what was told to use in 2026. And then it goes through the process and outlays year by year where these funds are going to. Unfortunately for these projects, we do not, I see, do we have a comment?
We did have a comment. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries.
What is that comment?
Yes, on YouTube, Jim Beatty says, I guess, Purdue's 700-employee microchip factory. What about Newman Road and Sharon Chapel Road? I'm sorry, I don't know exactly when that comment was made.
Okay, sorry for missing that. That project, if I remember right, is kind of a unique project in that I don't know what the typical funding will be. We have not received any specific information about those improvements, we usually unfortunately get those or get that information at a later point of time when it actually starts to roll. Unlike these projects here, I think that will be basically handled, if I remember correctly, more so by the state DOT. I think there will be assistance from Purdue University and um, the county. It's similar to the roundabout and the improvements on Newman Road that were done not too long ago. Special funding was used for that, not any of our typical funding that you see. When that project was actually rolling, we did receive the funding information for it and did program that. But at this time, we know that's going to happen, but they have not provided, whether it be the state DOT, Purdue, mostly either of those entities, that information to actually show into this document. So it's kind of an interesting project. It's not usually, it doesn't happen through our usual stream that we do here, but when we do receive the information, it will be included. So I hope that answers that question. And if not, please, if you have a follow-up, let me know. So anyway, getting back to the STBG funds, we do receive a lot of money, but unfortunately there are times where it's not enough and we do need more. So we do horse trading or trade between MPOs to borrow funds and then pay back funds. For example, table 8 here for fiscal year 2024, repay back to NIRPC. That is another MPO. That's their acronym. They are in Northwest Indiana, and we are borrowing that amount of money actually to construct or reconstruct Yeager Road. That is on this month's bidding list. So hopefully next week when the bids are open, we hope to have enough money to let that for construction. So we do some horse trading. As you can see, that table also shows trade for FY 2025 funds. 2024, yes, we do need funds, but we do need more funds in 2025. So we are borrowing, we are flexing funds to get enough money to actually handle the right-of-way, purchasing the additional land needed for Soldiers Home, both phase 1 and 2, and constructing phase 2 of Morehouse Road. And then you can see the more details further on. Excuse me. One thing with the STBG funds, we do have a set aside of 10% for non-road improvements, specifically looking at alternative transportation such as cycling and walking. Mainly these funds have been used for trails, and I think if you scroll down a little bit more, we basically, our goal is to use 10% of our federal funds for these projects, and according to this, we should allocate $2.15 million to this project. The only project that we have right now that we have enough money for is the Big 4 Trail. Unfortunately, the big three, what we call Morehouse Road, South 9th Street, and Soldiers Home Road, are requiring a significant amount of funding. But we shouldn't be really concerned that we're kind of limiting. Those projects do include, sidewalks and specifically trails. We are fortunate enough to have officials both in the cities and in the county that recognize now that instead of having the request over and over again to include those amenities, they simply just include them. So it's great that we are at that point where they just we're going to include them in the project. So excellent. So do we have any more questions? It looks like, is there a 5 in the chat area? Or is that just a follow-up?
We don't have any questions at this time on Facebook or YouTube.
Okay.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah,
This
Steve.
is Stephen. I do have some questions on individual projects if you're
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Shoot.
okay. On the vehicle, emergency vehicle preemption, it's Lafayette and West Lafayette. Does
Correct.
that include the few state roads that we have, 231, Special 52, bits of 38 and 26?
That is a good question, and at this time, it does not.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that when we start looking at the project and moving this forward, there will be, information and discussion, especially with NDOT, about the project, because they definitely are going to work with them, especially with the signals that are fairly close. I would not be surprised that at some point NDOT join in on this project. That's wishful thinking on me, but it just makes sense. Like
But
what you pointed out.
Special
Oh,
52 through West Lafayette, the
yes.
Sagamore Parkway.
Mhm.
That right there is a big one. 231 doesn't have, as much traffic or lights on it, and
Mhm. Mhm.
38 and 26 are out, kind of on probably not. The parts of 38 maybe, but their lights are fairly far apart.
Right. Right. Mhm. Mhm. Good question, Steve. And you said you had
A couple
some more
more.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the Cumberland, I think phase 4 is what it's called.
Yes.
Is there any thought to putting a dual turn lane off of Sagamore Parkway as you're heading north? Because that backs up at
Uh,
time.
You are correct. Right now, the engineering, as you can see, is going to start in 2024. I suspect that when they start doing the design work and the looking at the road and looking at the demand, looking at the traffic counts, looking at how the turning movement counts, um, I suspect that not only will we see dual left turns from eastbound Cumberland to northbound Sagamore Parkway, but I would not be surprised to see dual left turn lanes from, let me see if I get this right, northbound Sagamore Parkway to westbound Cumberland.
That's the one I was referring to. That's the
Yeah.
one that gets really
So
backed up.
correct. So at this point, it's too early to say definitively yet, yes, that's going to happen, or yes, that's going to be included. Um, so when they go through the looking at this, and of course, I would not be surprised that eventually, at a point, they will have a public hearing on this for public comments. So I guess for right now, stay tuned, listened. The project has not yet started. So when it does get rolling, you'll probably hear definitely more about it.
Okay. And Morehouse and 350/Cowbear, is there still a plan for a roundabout there?
Morehouse and Calbury, yes. Hmm.
Okay. And
Yes.
any plans on widening the little bit of 350 that between Cowbear and Morehouse?
We have not seen that yet, or not heard of that happening. So, if that is on the radar, it was not passed on to us.
I know for a long time people were cutting through the cemetery
Hmm. Hmm.
because that intersection gets backed up.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That's
So,
all I've got now, Doug. Thanks.
okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump back and just cover quickly some other different funding, and these are fairly new. Probably if you go to page 38. Yeah, there we go. Carbon reduction funds. These are another funding category, and then these are used funds specifically to help us basically reduce our carbon footprint. December of 2022, as the report states, as you see here, NDOT published a draft strategy report, and basically identified, a number of different things that can be done: reduce total fuel consumption, switch to low zero emission fuels, reduce vehicle miles traveled. Additionally, NDOT MPOs identified 5 categories. Use alternative fuels, energy efficiency, active mode, transportation demand management, technology solutions, and then just something unspecified, which you'd need more detail. Well, all of our projects, as you see, the road projects, Morehouse Road, South 9th Street, Big Four Trail, Soldiers Home Road Trail, all have what we call the active mode portion of it. So those funds can be used or will be used to build the sidewalk and trail portion of the projects. The technology solution, if we didn't have enough safety funds, we could actually use these funds for that project as well. Another new category that I'm going to touch on, protect funds, starts on page 40. These funds here are something new and basically gives us the ability to spend federal funds on improving projects and addressing climate change. There are basically a couple things that we will be doing, and I pointed those out in the document on page 41, just a little bit below what you see here. And basically the two big ones are upgrades and installation of the structural stormwater controls, and then evacuation routes. And then right below that is a fairly lengthy discussion of each project and what these federal funds will be used for. For example, and I'll just throw this out here, just pick one, Soldiers Home Road. You know, right now, part of it is a rural cross section, part of it is an urban cross section, part of it does have storm drains, part of it does not. So this project will basically replace all of the storm drainage, upgrade all of that. Plus, I mean, if you think about Veterans Home, if there is an emergency, Soldiers Home Road getting to Special 52 is one of the evacuation routes. And, excuse me, the Big Four Trail, we have that information here at the bottom. You think, okay, how can that project, address climate change? Well, when and the city engineer Jeremy thought about this, is that actually when this project does occur, instead of just building, putting asphalt or some kind of hard surface down beside the road for the trail, they're actually going to reconstruct everything under it and beside it, and especially address all of the stormwater drainage, because the sections where this is going to occur along 9th Street and Cassuth Street have, stormwater drainage systems that have been there for many, 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 many decades. So they're going to bring everything up to code and basically, so we can use these federal funds for it. So it was wise of him to not only just think of building a trail, but actually doing something that will help the drainage along along 9th Street and Cassuth as well, and address climate change. So it was very smart on his part to actually look more at just building the trail. So um, but then we typically have our safety funds, then we have our transportation alternative funds, which, we receive those and have been receiving those for many, many decades now. And I've already mentioned the safety funds will be used for emergency vehicle preemption. And then we also list out how much will be spent specifically for NDOT and their projects, by year. So this gives you a good idea of where exactly your federal funds are and those specific federal funds. The next part I want to jump into is the project selection process, section 853. And basically it outlines how we go about selecting projects that will receive our federal funds. I won't get into the details of that, but if you have any questions about that, you can read that. And then we also have a point here, NDOT projects on page 55. Typically, other MPOs, matter of fact, I think we're the only ones that do this. We recommend NDOT priority projects, and these are projects that we feel that NDOT needs to do, and we keep bringing this up to them whenever we get a chance. Because right now they're basically in the mindset, at least in our area, to do just maintenance, but we would like other things to do for them to do more, and that is for I-65. You know, they're widening it right now, but they need to widen it to 6 lanes, both north and south. Of course, the northern corridor, which you know what we called in the past, the 231 extension, that's still very important to us. And then address Special 52 is what Steve alluded to, Sagamore Parkway. A couple new projects that we are showing in this on State Road 38 and US 52, Sagamore Parkway. And you can see the locations, sidewalk construction. NDOT now has a program where they have money set aside to just build sidewalks. It's fairly new. It started last year. We actually did a sales pitch last year and asked that they look at these 2 sections, and it actually, from my understanding, going up through the pipeline. So I'm hoping to have some good news to report here soon. If we will see new sidewalks along 1 or 2 of these corridors. So keep your fingers crossed. We feel like these are important. And then the next thing, of course, is that both Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration want us to pick projects and look at target achievements. And, you know, basically, instead of just sitting around and saying we want to build this project or this project, we need to have some hard data. We need to have information to help with those decisions. And this section actually addresses that. So at your leisure, I mean, it's fairly extensive. There's a lot of information for that. So, you know, I mean, that's eventually what we're going to, is that we're going to be deciding these projects on all of this data. And then basically the next section, the big one, is analysis of financial capacity of city bus. A very detailed analysis of city bus, both looking back and looking forward at their funding, looking at what projects they're going to do in the future, not only that they have the money for, but also what they would like to do. So if you have any inkling of what they're doing or would like to do, this section covers it. The only other thing I'd like to really cover, there are a few other things, but the next thing is going into the appendix. We have a lot of information here. We show, excuse me, my voice is getting hoarse. Basically, the federal funding and how it's calculated and where it comes from. We have, excuse me, the adopting resolutions, which of course haven't happened yet. We have information here about our certification review. Excuse me, let me get a drink here real quick. But, oh, excuse me. Appendix 5 on page 104. Excuse me. Anyway, this is where we document everything that we do. Whenever we have a meeting, whenever this is discussed, whenever we have comments submitted to us, whenever we have information coming to us, we document everything here. And we also document, you know, our responses to that. So the December CPC meeting, as you see here, everything that was stated or asked, it's documented here. So whatever you asked tonight, you're going to see in this document, so that when anybody reviews it, whether it be here locally, in Federal Highway Administration, they'll see the entire process and what was asked, and then actually how we responded to it. And we also have information in here We have already received comment back from the Indiana Department of Transportation on some stuff. That's included in here. The next thing we are going to include is that last Thursday we received the comments from the Federal Highway Administration, and we sent those in actually earlier today, and that will be included in here. And again, anything tonight that we discuss or your questions or comments will actually be included here. So later on, further on, we have additional information like all of the notices that are posted. Here we have the what we call the administrative amendment policy. So everything is documented in the various different appendices. So in a nutshell, it's a fairly substantial document. Yes, we've got it. We were able to get it done in a very, very short timeline. Started in early October, and finished the draft in early February. Tonight is the public hearing. We wanted to roll this out and let everybody know, about the document. I wanted to spend a lot of time going over the individual pieces, give everybody here the opportunity to comment, state your questions, tell us what you think, and then after that, what's the next step? Well, we will be then starting next month going through the adoption process. In April, we will be presenting this to the Technical Transportation Committee. And then in early May, we will be presenting it to the Policy Board. And when the Policy Board approves it, then technically the document is completed. But yet, down the road, we may get some more questions and comments from NDOT, and we will address those. But on the local side, we're hoping to have all of this finished up in early May. So that concludes my presentation, my dog and pony show. So if you have any questions or comments, know this is a lot of information. If you can't think of anything this evening or come up with something like later this evening or the next day or two, feel free to give us a call or drop us an email. We'll be more than glad to answer any of those. So I'll go ahead and open the floor up now. So please, if you have anything to say, let us know.
I did just want to add one thing that Doug did kind of mention this, but I do want to emphasize this, that this is a living document. So it's not something that is just going to stay exactly the same as how it is presented tonight, especially with the financial portions of the projects. Those are constantly changing, and we update those very regularly. And if you're interested in kind of following along with those updates, we do those at our monthly Technical and Policy Board Committee meetings, and you can find recordings of those online, as well as we also consistently post updates when we do those. So you can always check on our website for the very, very latest version of the project information.
Okay, it looks like Aria mentioned nothing on Facebook or YouTube at this time. So appears that we don't have any questions or comments. So I'd like to thank for those who are attending this evening and listening in. Appreciate your interest. So, and again, throw the offer out. If you have anything you'd like to add or questions on, call or email. Feel free to do so. And again, thank you for listening in.
Okay, thank you, Doug. So we'll kind of hop back to our program. So at this point, we will be taking other questions, comments, and suggestions. So that can be about any other issues that weren't covered in Doug's presentation about the Transportation Improvement Program. So maybe if you had something left over from a previous month that you wanted to follow up on or something along those lines, then we would take those questions at this time. And I'll go ahead and pause for maybe about a minute or so for the stream to catch up with us. And in the meantime, I will use this opportunity to point out our meeting dates for 2023. So obviously, this is the first one, and our next meeting will be on June 14th. And then we also have one in September on the 13th, as well as in December 13th. So those are going to be our remaining 3 quarterly meetings for this year. So we hope that all of you can attend and bring forward any issues that you may have at that time. We'll look forward to hearing from you. And have there been any comments that have come in on Facebook or YouTube while I've been kind of rambling a little bit here, Aria? Okay, she says nothing at this point. So I do want to open the floor up one last time to those members of the committee that are attending online. So if you guys have any additional questions, comments, or suggestions. All right, sounds like we're not hearing any. So with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Steve.
This is Gene, I'll second.
Okay, and a second from Gene. So with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote, I guess, just for formality purposes. So Steve and Gene, I'm going to assume that you're going to vote yes. So Drew, would you like to vote yes for adjournment? Oh, okay. I see you put that in the comment box there. Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you again for coming tonight and listening to what Doug had to say, and we'll see you on June 14th.
Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you. Have a good evening.